Ladies and gentlemen,
This is Gamertag Radio.
So we're back here, another interview now. But let's first of all, please present yourself and tell us what do you do?
My name is Jorg Neumann, and I'm the head of Microsoft Flight Simulator.
Awesome, and I know you've done some work with Paris. I'm watching you, Paris.
Yeah, I'm watching you too.
It's all good. Now, honestly, I'm very impressed with this project. Very impressed. Yeah, I love the first game. What I know you don't call it a game, call it a sim,
man.
a sim. I see both. I see. No, but honestly, like the first one, I did a long flight for 6 hours from Los Angeles all the way to Dominican Republic, Punta Cana.
Oh, wow.
That was like before I proposed to her over there. Yeah, so I won't mention that. But that was the coolest experience of my life because a lot of the people that were watching the stream, they were telling us, well, they were telling me hey, Danny, it's a storm coming up. Be careful. It's going to be kind of bumpy and all that. So that was really cool. Now, I'm very excited to do that again with this game because now there's so many changes. So please tell us a little bit about the changes we're going to get to see from this one.
Boy, oh boy, where do I get started? So, okay.
Let's go with weather. Weather-wise.
Weather-wise, we added cloud types. There was a lot of, we had clouds is heavily dependent on lighting. So we switched over to a photometric lighting system, which basically means the lux levels are accurate wherever. And what you get out of that is that the bottom of the clouds actually look thicker now. They look darker. In flights in 2020, they kind of didn't. They look very puffy and happy. But, some clouds are angry and they're full of water, and that's why it downpours. And so that is all better now. We have cirrus clouds, which are much higher, which is critical. There's lots of cirrus clouds in the world. So, and beyond that, I think the weather is mostly as good as it was.
Okay.
As great as it was.
See, well, I did an experiment. There was a hurricane, Category 5, going to, I think, somewhere in South Florida. Took my plane, flew through the hurricane, went to the eye. It was very impressive seeing that and experiencing that. Did a clip. It went everywhere because people were talking about like, oh my God, look, there's even hurricanes in the game. So is there any type of like different experience now with like, let's say a hurricane or like a thunderstorm?
There's tornadoes. So tornadoes. So when we started, we said, oh yeah, we're going to have predictable tornadoes. We're going to have tornadoes exactly where the tornadoes are. Yeah, okay. Well, it turns out.
A lot of people would love that information.
People would love that information. There is no such information. We're like, oh, yeah, right. No, clearly, nobody has that information. So we basically spawn tornadoes in where it makes some amount of sense. But is it predictive? No. Otherwise, we would be the best weather people on Earth, and we're clearly not that. We also added some other things like Aurora Borealis and Australis, which is obviously awesome phenomenon. But I think that's mostly what we did. The experience you had with the hurricane is actually what we had. I remember David and Seb called me one morning. They said, guess where we are? And I'm like, I have no idea. Where are you? And they're like, we're in the middle of the hurricane. We're in the eye. So I'm like, okay. So I actually jumped in there. And we were all in the eye watching the hurricane barreling down on wherever it was, Florida or something. But that's still very much there. And I think it's awesome.
So speaking of some of the data that you wish maybe you could put into the game, can you talk to us a little bit about the process of gathering all of the information that is going into Flight Sim 2024 that's going to make this more of like our real life 2.0?
Yeah. So I think the focus for us, we added helicopters and gliders actually late 2022. And that means you can land anywhere. And so the requirements for our planet went way up because all of a sudden, you can not just land at airports, you can land in any old field in the world or in the forest or whatnot. And then on top of that, you can now get out of the plane and walk around. So that required a completely different data set. Like we needed to know what exactly is the grass, the shrubbery, what animals are there, what are the sounds like. So we went way, way deep on what we call our digital twin. You could call it digital twin 2.0 maybe. And what we did is, so we have 2.5 roughly petabytes of satellite data. And we had to analyze that. So we had it, but like, what does that actually mean? So we took 28,000 tiles and marked them up, actually, but humans did. And that means you look very closely on the ground. You say, this is a rock. This is a little piece of water. This is a bush. This is a piece of grass. And then you funnel that to the system. We do that on Azure via machine learning. And then you get a result. And then you mark that up again. And then you funnel it to the system again. And what you end up getting is a very accurate depiction of what is what on Earth. And then we made 27 or so biomes, and we apply those biomes to those places. And that is why every Every tree now it might not be the exact right species of trees because there's 20,000 or so species of trees, but it's a very close approximation of the trees. So the ground looks real now. And in Flight Sim 2020, it really kind of didn't. The height field was right. The other stuff completely wasn't right.
Yeah, I know one of the things that I love to do is check on YouTube people that play Flight Sim, and they also have ATCs, but actually they interact. I think it's like a subscription service, like real people talking to each other.
Yeah.
There's a lot of codes that I have no idea what they're saying. So like for people like me that want to learn about that stuff, because in the game, you will talk kind of, right? Is there anything that I could, like for me to learn the things that they're saying, where to go, what to do?
I think, we did it, 2020, we did the traditional computer game thing, I would say. We did tutorials. We tried to jam as much information into these tutorials as we possibly could. And then we measured the outcomes, actually. We had, when we launched on PC, we had pretty long tutorials, 20, 30 minutes. And then we looked at how much people are actually retaining of this information. It was not good. That was not good. And then came the Xbox version, and we said, this is an opportunity to do this again. And so we broke out these tutorials into smaller bits. And all of a sudden, the retention went way up. People were like, oh, yeah, I remember this. And they could repeat it. And there was a score all of a sudden, so you could measure yourself. But it's still very much tutorials. Now we have this new activity system, which is a totally new dimension of flight simming. And the activity system is contextual, meaning you can't just jump in and firefight. It is not even a thing, right? Because you don't know how the plane works. You don't know how firefighting works. You don't know how really to drop anything. So instead, we are now funneling you through basically a career that mirrors the real world. You have to get your personal private pilot's license first, and then you need to get specializations, and you need to pass exams. And we're essentially preparing people to be great by doing it. And learning by doing is always better than just, here's your little, 20-page bullet-pointed list of, know this and that makes you better. I think this is a much more natural way, and I have high hopes that we will actually help people become better pilots, not just better simmers. Because that's the other thing. Like that's not nothing to do with your question, but like there is a lot of interest in flight sim these days because there is a severe pilot shortage on this planet. 800,000 commercial pilots are missing for just passenger and cargo flights. That's just that. And all the manufacturers call us and say, we've got to get help. We will not be able to recruit fast enough. And they look at us as an entry point. We're 15 million users. If we can do a better job actually getting people prepared for the careers in aviation, then this helps, in a way, helps mankind, in a way.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that because I know, full disclosure for people listening, I used to work with the Flight Sim team back when I was at Xbox. So I remember we talked about that pilot shortage even 4 years ago. And the fact that that's something that's still being worked on today is good and bad, right?
It got worse. It got worse due to the pandemic.
Right, of course.
Because a lot of pilots were grounded. The planes weren't even flying. So I got lots of pilots calling me. It's like, man, I'm keeping my skills up by just flying
through the sim.
Yeah.
It's really remarkable that Microsoft Flight Simulator can be that safe space for a lot of people who want to get into aviation, who want to keep their skills sharp, and even people who are curious about training and maybe will have that spark ignited and then go on to become pilots, and genuinely hope that is what happens. But I can't help but try to wrap my head around all of the information you've collected and how that could potentially help make the world a better place too. Is there anything you all talked about on your team with all of the data points that you've actually put together?
I mean, so there's something called Overture, which is an open data initiative that Microsoft is part of. So we use for Flight Sim a lot of OpenStreetMaps, which is an open data portal. Basically, people can contribute to it. Like you could trace the coastline of an island, say Dominican Republic. You could trace it to the highest content of detail. You could submit it. It's kind of like Wikipedia, and it's super cool. Like without that, we would not be what we are, and we want to give back. So Microsoft shares all of our satellite information into that system. Same with the height fields that we collect. We give that back. And we took it further this time. We actually went a little crazy. So we basically said, let's figure out where all the heliports are and all the glider airports and all the oil rigs and all this and all that and all the obstacles in the world. And we put teams on that for research. And we have completed we are quite sure we have the most complete databases of any of these things. And are we going to hold on to these somehow selfishly? No, we're going to give those back. We're going to give them to the FAA, and they can do to the heart's content. This is just to accurately depict the planet for everyone.
One thing that we talked about is when you create your own character for the career mode. I was very impressed in that. Like the amount of like skin hairstyles, it was very, very cool. I think it was even better than a lot of other games that have those type of features where you could create your character. Because they have sometimes it's like a hit or miss, but this one was very impressive seeing that. So how important was that to make it right?
It was one of the areas I felt most nervous about, honestly, because games are games. You come up with your own fiction and things. Who's going to tell you that something is wrong in your own game? Hard. It could be buggy and stuff, but like fictionally or factually, what is wrong? This one is real. This is a real world. There's real people, and they're all entitled to their opinions, and they have their truths. And when you say we're going to represent mankind, okay, so how do you do that right? So I ended up talking to the UN. I talked to all kinds of organizations that have insight into these matters. Everybody I could possibly find at Microsoft that I talked to other regions at Microsoft, and we try to. When you have to reduce 8 billion people down to a few hundred, those choices are really hard, and I know it's an imperfect solution for sure. And I'm quite committed to when we make world updates and we go forward that we're going to add, because we will have forgotten some stuff. There's no doubt, and I really want this to be as inclusive as possible.
So speaking of what you want to add, what are some of the things that you dream about coming to Flight Simulator that just are a little bit out of reach, but maybe someday we'll get there?
Oh gosh, the list is so long. Which area even to speak? I mean, for example, like there was an initiative I wanted to do all the polar bases. I'm very interested in making people curious about the planet and the faraway places, the not accessible things. I really think that there's some great benefits to showing these. So anyways, polar bases, it's kind of a strange thing, right? Polar bases. And so we did all the research, collected all the polar bases, have all the pictures and photographs. We actually started modeling it, but we couldn't get it finished. And then on top of it, the data we have for Antarctica, for example, isn't good. And it's not good because it's all camera-based. LiDAR is typically camera-based. And the snow reflection is such that the data is just garbage. And so what we have is not good. Still not. But then I read that in 2025, there's a research vessel going with a new type of camera flying over Antarctica. And I'm like immediately wrote an email, said, I need this data and I'm going to stick it in the flight sim. They said, yeah, sure, why not? So I have every intention to bring Antarctica in all its glory. It's the missing continent in all its glory into flight sim. And then we're going to model penguins and all kinds of cool stuff and make it accessible. How many people can go to Antarctica? I've never been. Probably will never go. So, but in flight sim you should.
Yeah, let's talk about also like animals from around the globe.
Yeah.
How was that? Because I know way back you worked on a project. Was it Planet Zoo?
I worked on Zoo Tycoon.
Zoo
Tycoon 1 and 2. Actually,
2.
spent a lot of. I love animals. It's one of those things. If I take photos, oftentimes there's an animal in it, or.
So tell me where to go. Where I'm gonna find certain animals that it's not in the United States. Like what?
They will be where they are. So basically, there is an open database, scientific research database that actually has extinct animals and wild animals. And it's a worldwide thing. It's very much like OpenStreetMap or Wikipedia. And they have distribution maps for all the wild animals, and not just static, also over time. So you can see in January, the wildebeests are here in the north, and then they migrate down until July into the south. And you can sort of see what the population maps look like. We actually use that data. So Flight Sim will have those densities accurately as we can depicted in our digital world. And there's lots of that. And then wildlife, sheep and those types of things, we actually do completely differently. We analyze the satellites where the fields are, and then we place cows where the fields are where cows would graze, sheep in Scotland or whatever. Like, so we're trying to do this as much as we can. And there's tons of animals. And there's a thing that Ken Lobb, right?
Yeah.
Ken always talks to me about rarity. I was like, I'm all in on rarity. So we have stuff like the Maltese tiger, of which there's almost none, or the snow leopard or something like this. And it's one of those things. It could be that nobody will ever find it. It's possible.
Well, my last question, I don't know if you have anyone, but my last question is your favorite activity and why?
Oh man, the favorite activity.
I asked the team the same question, hold on. So everybody had different answers.
I think now it shifts. That's the thing. I think it's now agricultural aviation. The answer would have been different about 4 weeks ago when it was advertisement. But I think there's something super satisfying about flying over places you've never been to, like Thailand. There's a field, and you're like, okay, for the people there to eat, I need to spray this field because that helps the plants grow or keep some bugs away. And I feel like I'm doing something good. I don't know. I mean, it probably makes no sense, but it makes me feel like I'm contributing to something.
Awesome, man. No, but it was an honor, man, talking to you. I can't wait to try this out once the game releases later this year. So congrats.
Great to see you, and I'm glad you had fun. I think this is it's a great product. So hopefully everybody at least try it. Aviation, sky's calling.
Yeah, let's do it. All right. Thanks, man.